Welcome to the Alternative Dog Moms podcast. I'm Kimberly Gauthier, creator of Keep the Tail Wagging. I've been blogging about raw feeding, pet wellness, and life as a crazy dog mom for more than 10 years. I've seen massive improvements in my dog's health since I began raising my dogs naturally, and I'm passionate about sharing my experience to help other pet parents.
I'm Erin Scott from the Believe in Dog podcast. For more than 10 years, I've been researching and learning everything I can about healing cancer, allergies, autoimmune, and mystery illnesses in both my dogs and myself. And I can't wait to share with you everything I've learned in case it could help you too. As the Alternative Dog Moms, Kimberly and I are bringing you all the latest dog health news that we're following and the brilliant people we're meeting along the way. Now let's get started. Hello, Kimberly.
Hello, Erin.
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary, 4 years. We're now in season 5 of Alternative Dog.
And we have one of our favorite guests here with us to celebrate. He was our very first guest ever, and he's back to join us annually. And I just feel like our streak of epic guests is continuing. So, Billy, thank you for joining us today.
You know, I just want to say I told someone at some point, because we were talking about your podcast, that I was the first guest, and they were adamant that I was not. So they were arguing with me about it. So I'm glad that you confirmed that.
Did they say who they thought the first guest was?
No, I'm not sure, but I was like, I'm pretty sure it was me. So, but you know, being from the Midwest, I was like, oh, I'm sure you're right. That's fine.
You weren't on the first episode, but you were the first guest.
I know now.
Go back. Whatever that means, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Oh, Kimberly's like, I'm going to check.
I know. I'm going to go check. Of course, this takes forever because it's been 4 years.
So, Billy, I was very excited to see the news that the frozen version of the extras line will be coming out soon because my Daisy girl, when we do our nose work, instead of giving her a meal, her regular meal at home, I just feed her the extras, turkey and sardine, during, it's like her treats for her nose work classes. And so we love that. So I'm very excited to see the frozen version is coming.
Those are that line of food is my dog's favorite food.
Yeah.
We've ever done. And it's just very palatable, with sardines and whatnot. And so it's been going really well. We're excited. We're actually ahead of schedule, I think, or right on schedule when it comes finally, because, with the freeze-dried one, we announced it in like July, and then it didn't come out until basically January. So that's not great. And I understand that people get, annoyed with that. But we've already made, as we speak, some of the frozen ones, so it will be in store soon.
Nice. It's only annoyed out of love because we love your products and just want them as soon as possible.
But I do have a question about the products. But first, I just want to say, June 24th, 2022, our first guest was Billy Hoekman.
Yay. Wow, that's 2022. That's crazy.
So, yes. So one thing that came up for me several years ago was thiaminase. And it was a discussion in a group where people were talking about you shouldn't store certain fish with your food. So like if you're making a big batch of food, you shouldn't add certain fish, basically fish that contains thiaminase in the batch, because it will slowly, I don't know if it's like somehow depleting any thiamine, any vitamin B that's in the food. And since you have this new recipe that has sardines, and some people, I believe some species of sardines have thiaminase, has that ever come up with you?
Well, that's an interesting first point you made about not storing them together. I wonder if those people meant like, well, it's frozen, or whether it's, just sitting in the fridge or whatever it might be, because they're probably talking about that substance breaking down the B vitamin. But that would be interesting, because obviously I don't think it would do that if it was frozen together. Mm-hmm. It's one of those issues that I think goes back to like essentially putting too much stock in one given thing. So you say to yourself, here's a great example. You might say to yourself, I'm trying to avoid oxalates in my pet's diet. Okay, great. But let's say you feed beets that are not fermented and there's oxalates in those beets. Like we don't want to just automatically go like you shouldn't feed that because it has X, because you have to look at what are the ramifications of X given the amount, given the other nutrients in the food, given all these other variable factors, right? Or anything like sugar in the beets. You might say, I don't want to do that. But then you look at the amount of beets you're doing, and it might be, 0.5 grams of sugar, whatever it might be, right? And so it's not going to offset that. And so that essentially, in my opinion, what's happening there is, yes, that can bind to B vitamins and, make them less digestible or make you not digest them. But that would just mean that like you make up for that by having more B vitamins in it. So there's in my opinion, besides raw milk, and now keep in mind, obviously, that every animal can't do every food, but besides raw milk, every food has all these positives and negatives surrounding it. And so we just, as a company, then need to make sure that we have enough B vitamins in that formula to offset that. It also goes back to the maybe it was a button issue before, maybe it's still, I don't know what's a hot button issue with raw feeders ever. So, um, the egg whites versus raw egg,
Yeah,
raw
I was
egg,
thinking about that too.
the avidin, and it's like, yes, that does bind biotin. However, you're going to get an abundance of biotin by feeding an egg yolk and other foods anyway. So I guess it's just a matter of like what you're comfortable with and also what you're trying to like fine tune. I know I'll give you one more example because my every answer is 88 minutes long, which is a thing. So, um, it sort of goes back to like the copper thing as well, right? Like just not understanding the general nuance of copper and food basis copper versus synthetic copper, and just kind of saying like, no, all copper is X, but it's not. And there's nuance there. And so I think for that specific thing, it would be more about just looking at the nuance of it versus this is bad, don't feed it.
Yeah.
I feel like nuance is just so gets lost in social media and internet culture.
No, it's crazy. Everyone, and I understand like the human mind wants to have a black and white solution. They want to be like, I make this food. This is what's in this food. I know it because of this. People can't wrap their head around variability, and it's what nutrition is. It's always variability all the time. It's just cool. That's what makes it exciting.
I I would have tagged you, but it was really no point to it. But I would have tagged you because I thought you would have gotten a kick out of it. But a couple weeks ago, someone got angry with me on Instagram because I said I had a recipe that had ground eggshells in it for calcium. And someone commented, you get more calcium with raw goats than you do with eggshells. And I was just like, nope, that's actually not true. However, I could be wrong. And so if you can show me where you're getting your information from, I'm open to it. And they were like, my information is my healthy dogs.
All right.
Okay,
One
that's
way to
great.
look at it.
That's great, but it's like I'm actually looking more for numbers, and I tried, and this person was just adamant, and probably for a couple days made a point of letting me know how crazy I was about the fact that eggshells offer more calcium, which of course sent me down a whole rabbit hole of comparing eggshells with not only raw goat's milk, but cottage cheese, spinach, because I'm lurking in a dog recipe group, and the things that people add as their source of various ingredients is kind of shocking. And and it's one of those things where it goes back to basically what you both were kind of saying is on social media, someone will say something and people will just take it as gospel and not actually question it or look a little further into it. So if someone out there says, well, spinach is a great source of calcium, they're like, got it. Well, spinach is in this recipe, so we got calcium down.
Yeah. Well, you'd have to look at the main thing there is to look at the other nutrients present. So, like, yeah, raw goat's milk has a lot of calcium, but it also has the same amount of phosphorus roughly. So you're balancing the food in and of itself. Versus if you're adding eggshells, we're basically just adding calcium to balance out other stuff. So
Yeah.
all those foods are going to be in that camp when it comes to that. So, I mean, I don't discount. I will die on the hill. Personal experience is an amazing form of evidence, but that is a numbers based question.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, if you're using uh, ADF to look at those numbers, and you look at the like our thing for raw goat's milk on there, that nutrient profile comes from. So I did that, and that was basically like some testing, but also I dove into like literature, the scientific literature, to make up for what we don't know. And so, FYI, when you look at that, that's where that comes from.
Oh, good to know. Thank you.
That's fascinating.
I think it's the most accurate picture. Sorry, Erin.
No, that's fascinating. Like, because you do want like I try not to. I try not to just start being like, so where do all these things come from, and how do we know? And
Oh well, it's and this is what's really been on my mind recently is it's just so interesting between there's all these ways in which we can measure diets and completeness. And that's basically what you guys are seeing in those groups a lot is people, this diet's complete or this diet's complete. But when I talk about the variability, I mean, it's just out there all the time. A great example of that was, and I can point to this in a million different ways through my entire career looking at different testing. So like we did a feeding trial, and that was a great way to gather data. And people will say, "Oh, well, it's only 6 months, and but that's true. That's a limitation in it. But at least we have some data on blood work and physicals, and veterinary examinations on how animals do just on our food. So it's a good glimpse into it. But what I think people don't get is that there is no surefire method way to do this. And I actually honestly think the best, whether you're doing it yourself, or whether you're doing it through something like ADF or something like that, I honestly do think the best way to find what is the most plausible thing in terms of numbers is software like that, because you're averaging test data, you're averaging data that people just don't have and companies just don't have. And the testing is so interesting and weirdly variable. Here's a great example. I was once looking at a test for our lamb recipe, and the vitamin D in the test came back as equal parts vitamin D2 and D3. But that's not possible. Vitamin D2 comes from plants, and there's almost none of it in meat. There's trace amounts of it. It's actually impossible for that to happen. But that's what the test said, right? And you see all this variable to where you're like, this is so. I just find it interesting that people kind of like think to themselves, I'm adding this much squash, so there's this much, magnesium in this recipe. It's great to shoot for that, and it's great to have something to start with, but we do have to revert back to like food. That's why we're all here, right? We have to revert back to like you can only know as much as we can know and feed whole foods.
so how do you nutrient test food for something like that? Like, uh, is it go to a lab? Like, how do they even determine like how nutrient dense something is?
Yeah, I mean, there's, one of a couple labs that people use around the country. And it just depends on the type of testing you want to do. So, like, anytime you want to get like just the base packaging stuff, like, protein, fat, that kind of stuff, that usually includes basically a whole mineral profile. But once you go to, like, say you want to do like a falafel panel or something like that, those things are, very expensive, and so you do them at whatever rate you can afford, I feel like. But again, I've kind of come around on the idea that like when we can use that as like a verification, but honestly, I think the software or your own software, like I make my own spreadsheets, that kind of thing, like, I think it's more useful long term.
Did you ever resolve the D2, D3, like where that came from?
No, it's like the lab is not going to like, I just basically, there are certain things you just put off as an anomaly. Here's another great example of that. One time we were verifying the calcium to phosphorus ratio for all life stages, large breed puppies, and we essentially did like, might have been like, this was in beef specifically, but we have like 6 different tests, right? And so we can look at those numbers. And all those tests vary widely and they average out to be what they're supposed to be. One of the tests said there was no calcium at all. And what happened there, presumably, was that within that little bit of test that they took, that sample, there was probably no bone in it. That's a pretty easy thing. We mix food together, but that doesn't mean every bite is not the same. I can guarantee you that. And so again, that goes back to food. And so you wouldn't look at that food and go, "Oh, there's no calcium in this." Well, we know there is because we put bones in it, right? And so that's where you have to just look at that data and say, "Well, that's incorrect," or "That doesn't make sense for what we're looking at." But it is interesting because some of the samples were more variable, but when you average them all out, they averaged out to be what they should be.
So could the D2 have come from something that the lamb ate? Like, could they,
See, that crossed my mind, but it would convert into D3, right? Like if you give a chicken a bunch of flaxseed, that will convert into EPA and DHA, even though it's ALA right in there when they make it. Or the same thing would be true with like cows or something, you know. So it could be. There's really, and also when you look at measurable D2, I mean, the only real thing is like mushrooms and mushroom concentrates, and there's no mushrooms in that. And so, like for example, on our food line extras, so we have a good amount of D2 and D3 in that because in that whole food vitamin and mineral base we use, it the vitamin D comes from shiitake mushrooms. So we have those, and it's not as good of a source as vitamin D3, but it contributes, right? And so there, I would look at that test and go, "Oh, we would expect that," and I would make a note of those 2 things. But there's just nothing in the lamb that would be. And there's other examples of that too. I'll just give you one more because I don't want to bore everyone to death. My other example too is like you put we use mixed tocopherols like natural vitamin E as a preservative, and that vitamin E shows up on a nutrient test. And basically, like you'll have our vitamin E be really high in one test because it's picking up that vitamin E as a preservative, and then it'll be the same. Let's say if that was beef, and then we have lamb, and it comes up much lower. There's no reason for that because we put the same amount in every single one of those. It's just that specific test didn't pick up that thing. So it's actually quite annoying as a manufacturer because when you're using food, this is why people put synthetic vitamin and mineral packs in their food because they take away any of the liability of risk.
Hmm, which makes sense. You're not supposed to be up here. Or you. I just got yes in my office. We have a rule that they're not supposed to come upstairs, but clearly
But they're here. Yes.
clearly that doesn't matter.
I once stayed at an Airbnb that was dog friendly, and I had Lou at the time, and then we got to the Airbnb, and unbeknownst to us, they had all these like rules surrounding dogs, like they didn't tell you before you went there. And they were like, the dog can't be on the furniture or in the bed, and I was like, they should probably tell us this before people come because it's not like my dog's gonna know that.
Yeah.
Where we're gonna just keep pushing her off the couch. Like, what is this? So I think I did it anyway because like what could I have done? But
Yeah.
and that's not dog friendly.
No.
I do have a dog bed in here. I mean, so I did plan for the dogs to come in here. They have toys in here, and there's a dog bed in here. But yeah, I'm assuming that Johan's not here anymore because they certainly did just walk right in. Anyway, okay. So, do you want to harass him about fiber?
Yeah, yeah.
So last week we had Dr. Connor Brady on, and we talked about fiber and the best sources of fiber. And, he was very clear that he's not saying that vegetables aren't good for fiber. He just, as I understand it, he believes that fur and feathers are a better source.
Uh, I've heard that as well. I want to disclose that he's a friend of mine, and
He mentioned that he actually spoke very highly of you in the episode, just for the record.
yeah, and I appreciate he wants to push boundaries and get people talking. I do exactly the same thing, so I appreciate that in a general sense. I think where we break on that is you need so I think that those sources of fiber can be important, but we have like I mean, if you look at a company like Animal Biome, we have a ton of science to show that the microbes that specifically feed bacteria, which come from plants, and aren't like roughage, if you will, are very effective at growing those bacteria. We know just looking at and Animal Biome did some of that research with just greens, our products, but we know from just looking at them that they will say to people, "Oh, your microbiome's out of balance. Try adding more fiber from these X sources," and then we can see the data on the return test to get what they consider to be obviously a healthier microbiome, given the breadth of all their samples or whatever. And so that's where I'd say the main difference is. Like I remember it's interesting to think about, but I remember there was a point I was feeding Huckleberry like whole rabbits with fur, like a lot of the time, and it was an interesting experience. His stools were like great, but he pooped like 5 times a day.
Yeah.
It was very interesting. Like he would just be like almost like bulldog walking, and it would just like come out. It was like, all right, well, here we are. So
That's actually exactly how my dog Nino has always pooped.
yeah, so it's like one of those things where you kind of look at. I see both sides of it, but we've been seeing, and then you go to like even the anecdotal part of it, which is Green Juju as a whole. The reason why this is a company in and of itself is because of all of the health benefits when it comes to you know fiber that comes from plants and those types of fiber that actually that we know feed microbes. And so I would say, it probably comes down to what works for your dog, what works for your dog specifically. But I'm not a blanket statement person. I don't doubt that there are dogs out there that will do better with animal sources of like roughage. I want to make that distinction. And I think that eating a feather in terms of like that's more of like roughage versus, fiber, but there very well could be dogs that do better off all roughage, more roughage, whatever. I would just say like for us to go like, oh, here's a new concept that's cool and interesting. Therefore, maybe this other thing. I don't think we have the data to show that the other things wouldn't be as effective or more effective. Um, and I got to tell you, even with my own dog, I mean, with even just looking at my first dog versus Huckleberry now, I feed a ton of fibrous plants just generally. And that combined with our probiotics, I mean, I've seen him become an insanely resilient dog and an insanely healthy dog. Even just looking at this like French bulldog that's supposed, had issues and supposed to have all these issues and be like, wow, you're just totally healthy. And that's kind of interesting because my other thing this year is kind of like, how do we build resilience? How do we make animals actually resilient. Like 100 years ago, dogs just ate anything and they were fine. They were just fine all the time. They, go into the garbage and eat a chicken carcass and they're like, oh, good. No help, it's fine. And now we have like dogs who eat a blueberry and then they're out for 4 weeks, because they're having like a reaction to it. And so it's like, I think fiber in general, and especially what we've seen on the plant side of it, really is half of the equation for making dogs like actually healthy again.
And, I actually had written down in my notes about Green Juju's origin story a little bit. If I'm remembering correctly, wasn't Kelly's dog sick at the time that she was putting together the formula that was Green Juju? Because I was just thinking, when you have a health issue that you're dealing with, that the antioxidants, the phytonutrients that are found in vegetables can be beneficial in those ways to help restore a balance and provide extra nutrients when there's an illness or a dis-ease.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. She had a rare joint tumor and she was getting ready for surgery and she needed to get it right. And then from that experience came all of those, stories from people independently who are like, oh, it did this, it did this. And we don't want to discount that type of evidence because it's true. I mean, when we released our wild fermented mushroom probiotic, I've had to have at least 25 to 50 people tell me independently that that it either eliminated their dog's tear stains or that it helped greatly. I have no idea what the mechanism is for that. I don't know why that happens, but I'm pretty sure it happens because it would be weird if those people who all don't know each other, conspired to make this thing up. And so that's, nowadays it's like, well, do you have the study to prove it? No, but it works. So who cares?
And honestly, so much of the studies now have to be funded by big corporations that sometimes I start raising an eyebrow when there is a study that's proving something, because it's like, well, who funded this to put this out there?
That's very true.
Absolutely. I was gonna say something, but now I lost it. So I'm gonna mute myself while I think.
Well, I did want to, I don't want to like, take over here, but it's fresh on my mind because, we haven't got all the results back yet, but I did want to say, we're going to be announcing them soon. And I did have like some of like 2 data points, which I think are really interesting. So we actually did a clinical research study on soil, our, probiotic, because when you make something that's new, and that's just, as like a completely new concept in human or pet, like we don't list the probiotic strains on the side because we don't know what they all are, right? Because we can only test for a certain amount, and we're growing out a whole food culture. And so the results from that thing in terms of before this clinical research study have been incredible. I think the making dogs more resilient, getting more consistency, just making them healthier. The information we've been getting from the users has been amazing, but it is really nice to tie it together with something and say, look, we did the clinical research study and we can actually show you some measurable data. And again, this is just kind of the quick hitters because I haven't been presented the data yet, so we don't know. And I do want to keep you I'm not an expert in this test, so I'm not, if I get something wrong, then I get something wrong. But we worked with Innovative Pet Labs. And so they do a lot of great tests regarding the gut, not necessarily in the bacterial growth, but some of the things you can measure like inflammation and that kind of stuff. And that's what we were looking for because we want to tell people, look, this is what we found and this is what you can expect. So the first one is there is a specific enzyme which is released. No, it's a specific substance that essentially comes from. So when you have an overgrowth of bad bacteria in your gut, they will actually release the substance that essentially it's called beta glucuronidase. There you go. And basically what it does is it stops, among other things, it stops the second phase of liver detoxification. So it sends those toxins back into the gut, into the bloodstream. And what happens is a hallmark of having, they can measure this substance and they'll know how much bad lack of diversity and bad bacteria there is, but this has a real effect on your health because it's stopping your liver from detoxifying the body. So it was a 60-day trial, and they saw a 57.5% reduction in that
Oh,
substance
nice.
within that time. So that's a
That's amazing.
huge factor there. And then there's another test that they did, which was something called calprotectin, which is a substance that comes off of white blood cells. And basically, it measures the amount of, through proximity, measures the amount of white blood cells that your gut is sending out to fix inflammation. So that if they measure the calprotectin, they could say there's a high amount of inflammation here, or a lower amount. And so they saw a 20% reduction in 2 months of that calprotectin, which, if you could say right now, oh, if I give this to my dog for 2 months and reduce basically his inflammation by 20%, that's a big deal. And so those are just the first two. There's more to this data that we're gonna release and stuff like that. The other really interesting one was it showed that it would reduce sensitivity to gluten,
Oh.
and I don't have the numbers on that. And I let me rephrase this. I have the numbers on that. I don't know how to interpret them. So I don't know if it's a big whatever it is, but I just thought that to me leads to it's making the gut healthier in general. And we're gonna do a full blown live release on that, and so yeah, we're excited.
So that's
Nice.
based on your soil probiotic product, right? And that
Mhm.
comes from actual soil, right?
It comes from plants, so that are grown in soil. So essentially, yes, because you're going to have the same bacterial content on those organic plants. So basically, what we did was I literally took Bailey's blend in my kitchen. I added salt to it to intensify the ferment, and then I wild fermented it. And so all the probiotics come from the cilantro, the green cabbage, the broccoli, all those things that have. So it's the probiotic equivalent of letting your dog go out and roll around in the grass and eat dirt, you know. Um, but it's cool because it's the food without the food. So if your animal can't do fermented foods, or if they struggle with this, with a specific dairy or whatever, they can use these probiotics, and that's kind of the one of the bigger points.
That is really exciting.
Okay, so I remembered. Oh, wait, no, oh, no. eh,
You,
I kinda
you
remember.
have to know now. Come on.
And it was about probiotics. Oh,
Okay.
yes, it was about probiotics because so there was a recent discussion on social media between Dr. Connor Brady and Julianne Lee of Adored Beast about probiotics. And what I find interesting is I feel like they were both kind of saying the same thing, but just coming from a different space where people are using probiotics as a cure-all without really understanding what strain their dogs need and what they will do, and or taking the time to get to the underlying reason why their dog is having an issue. And I have seen this primarily in like the dog lover groups, not so much the fresh food groups, but the dog lover groups where people are just sort of exploring feeding fresh food or doing anything different. And so when they're looking at probiotics, they're either going and getting some human product and giving it to their dog, or they're getting something, at a big box pet store, which probably doesn't have much of anything in it, or a food that says it has probiotics in it, but it's been baked for 10 days, so the probiotics are dead. And so, anyway, I just was wanting to give you an opportunity to weigh in on the topic since this is kind of your bailiwick.
Yeah, and that would be an interesting discussion. I remember when I was at the Nautical Dog Summit last year, and we did Kelly and I did the coffee talk, and it was like on the Sunday, and I said during that, because Connor Brady was there, and also Dr. Katie Kangas, who's a friend of mine who is amazing, who I think you both know. And I I basically wanted to I started that by being like, I'm going to tell you guys real quick about my probiotics, and about these new probiotics. And this is for Connor specifically and Katie, because I want you to understand the difference of this, because he is also into like fecal transplants. And so, you know, we were talking about that, and I was basically trying to say, like, the reason these are different is because they are the bacteria that's just found in nature. So, like, if you were to rotate between the three of them, you'd get these thousands of different probiotics, but they were farm, for instance, right? They are what you'd get if your dog lived on a farm and was sleeping in the barn and doing all these things. These are the bacteria. So I got him to say that it could actually be more effective than a fecal transplant because it is just the bacteria that comes from nature, like in concentrated forms. And so, but that's not to say that there isn't. I mean, Adored Beast has an amazing track record for using specific strains to do, to achieve certain health outcomes. And so I'm never downplaying that. Again, I don't ever jump to, we did it this way, so this is the only way. Like, unfortunately, that's what marketing does. It turns into that eventually. But like, we're not. I'm not here to say that. I'm just here to say like what we do well. And I know Julianne Lee very well, and I think she has a wonderful way of, whenever we've done something, I feel like we're on the same page, but we come at it from different angles.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's kind of the same thing. And so there's a lot of like stores, for instance, that had Adored Beast and did really well with it and brought in our probiotics. And I would tell them, like, why not rotate between them? If the dog's
Mhm.
doing great on it, why not just throw these in, whatever, get more of that base of, get more diversity, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, it's one of those things where I think the gut is, and rightfully so, the gut is it's the new health thing, but it's absolutely should be. And so, we're at a point now where we're going to see a lot of people try to capitalize on that. So it'll
Yeah.
be interesting to see like what the solutions are, because usually pet food companies aren't very good at that. So we'll
So
see what happens.
when we're giving our dogs probiotics, I mean, because I always worried that if I did it too much, even if though it's a natural probiotic, it's not like a supplement from a nutrient, or what is it, like GNC or something. I don't know if you guys have GNC, but that's our supplement store.
Mhm.
Um, but like in, your soil probiotic, or Phytos Flora from Adored Beast, or Gussie's Gut, something like that. I like to alternate between everything with my dogs. But is there a time when we're just doing too much? Like, because there are the people out there that are like, we shouldn't have to give our dogs probiotics because of, A, B, and C, which I don't know if that's exactly true either.
I think we should. I think that person isn't considering the fact that we put our dogs in almost completely sterile environments,
Mhm.
and that's where they live all the time. Um, but we do that to ourselves as well. We know that, there's a researchers are now starting to study the Amish because they don't have allergies. You don't need a study. I can tell you why they don't have allergies, and it's because every farm I go to, the kid is barefoot all summer and up to his knees in manure, and he's constantly exposed to everything. And our dogs, unfortunately, are the opposite of that. And especially cats. I mean, cats never go outside for the most part. I mean, it's a big problem in terms of that, like a natural inoculation. And so I think you can overdo it in one sense. And that is, if your animal has never had probiotics before, they eat kibble, say, for their entire life, and then you just give them a huge dose of a particular probiotic that has like 1 or 2 or 10 strains of bacteria. And by the way, just because they have diarrhea doesn't mean that you're headed in the wrong direction. Something is going to happen to the gut. But when it comes to like what we do, it's really hard to overdo it. I'll give you a great example of that. So with my own dog, I I feed him freeze dried food because that's the food that he likes the best, and I get to do fun things to rehydrate it. Right. So I rehydrate it with homemade medicinal mushroom broth and our wild fermented mushroom probiotics. I put that in to hydrate. I soak it overnight, and that's where he gets that. So that's one probiotic. I also give him soil every day, and then I rotate between the other two. So he gets soil and farm one day, he gets soil and leaf the next day. I just go through like that. He also gets raw goat's milk. He also gets random stuff. Like I made pomegranate kombucha last week, and so
Ooh,
I have
yum.
these fermented pomegranate seeds that I've been putting in his food as well. these are all sources of probiotics, but they're food or they're food based. So they're not potency based, they're diversity based. So
Mhm.
all he's getting is this like low level of a ton of thousands of different bacteria. And that's going to put him more in the range of like, again, if he slept in the woods and lived outside and was just naturally being inoculated with it. So I think as long as you're like with our probiotics, you can use them as a base and then use anything else you want. Especially, use them like Gussie's got that's just fermented food. So like,
Mhm.
you know, um, so yeah, that's really the only way I think you can overdo it.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I made my mushroom broth. I
Oh,
have a
you did? Yeah.
yeah, I have a video.
Oh,
I made it a while ago. I just actually thawed out a jar of it yesterday, so I made it a while ago, and I'm putting up the video today, but it was so crazy easy. And because I feel weird for it because I know so many people who don't like mushrooms, but I love mushrooms and I love the smell of mushrooms and just the house smelled so good that day.
yeah. Yeah. I just made it last night actually. And shout out to Lee Carroll for that.
Yeah.
Giving me the ratio of water to mushrooms. I'm actually speaking with him in Australia in October. So that will be a journey as
Wow.
well.
Yeah.
Literally and figuratively.
Yeah, I'm not so excited about the flight, but I'm like, this is too good of an opportunity to pass up. So
That's amazing. Yeah.
you guys are coming, I assume. I mean, obviously.
Yeah.
So
We will
it's
be in Vegas together again,
Yeah. And San
oh great.
Diego.
in San Diego. Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, cool. Well, and Aaron, that's like your thing now, right?
I work for Wolf Creek. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. So um yeah, we will be uh I'll be at all those things. It's actually nice that HVMA is in San Diego this year.
Yeah, it's
Actually,
cool.
AFCO is in San Diego too. So
Oh.
that will be two trips for me generally. But uh, yeah, I always look forward to Global's fine. I'm about to go to Global next week. It is a fun time because like our whole team's together and stuff. So it's always fun to hang out and stuff for the week. Um, but Super Zoo is just so much more fun. I feel like so
Yeah.
and everybody's there and it's a thing.
I try to get my friends to come with me to Super Zoo because, all my dog lover friends, because I'm just like, "I'll just put you on and we'll just be a business and we can just go." But it's never gonna happen. And now that did I tell you I sold Keep the Tail Wagging? So Keep the Tail Wagging
Yeah.
is sold. So I don't really have a business anymore.
Well, congrats on that. Um, yeah, I think last year I got at the Two Crazy Cat Ladies party, I got the number two trophy, which I still have. So so that's there. That was completely unexpected, but hopefully we're working on some stuff behind the scenes. So hopefully at Super Zoo, you guys will see some new products there. That's always the hope. We always try to, release by the schedule of the shows. And um, we had a meeting yesterday with Dr. Keith, our staff vet. We were going over our vet program, and we've been doing a lot of stuff with that. By the way, we have like 180 vets in our vet program now, so
Oh,
it's
wonderful.
expanding.
That is, like,
Um,
so astounding because it's like I've watched Kelly since the very first product when she would just drive around delivering it to people and
yeah.
have watched it grow into what it is today, and it's just, like, so astounding.
Oh, it's crazy. And there'll be days where she's having a little self doubt, and she'll be like, am I good at this? It's like, yeah, look at what you built. This is
I
crazy.
know.
Like,
It is. It's like
this is
it's
this is
truly amazing, and the fact that you guys are still coming out with products, that's what really just blows my mind is that at some point in time, it's like, what else can there be? And you surprise us each time. I'm still just in love with the mushroom, the wild fermented mushroom broth. That's my favorite product.
yeah, it's that was just such an interesting process because we were actually developing like three things at once. And then it just turned into that one thing. Like you may be going like, oh, we can do this trio. And then the other two don't work out for some reason. And you end up with this thing. And it really is just, sending cremini, shiitake, oyster, and lion's mane mushroom up to John King, who in his, work in his facility, his not much larger than a shed, just really just ferments those, and then they put it in. It's just such a cool, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like DIY, almost, like process. Like, people don't understand. Like, I'm actually giving a tour of the facility here. A store's coming all the way from Vancouver, Washington, and they're flying out, and I'm on their own dime. To their credit,
Nice.
I said to him, if you come out here, I'll show you around. And I was like, I told Antoine, my coworker, I was like, they're going to come. I know they're going to come. Uh, so I'm excited about that, but it is fun for us to show that, because it is such a homegrown, it's like the guy who produces, dude, because our veggie blends moved to Pennsylvania, the frozen ones.
Mhm.
So the guy who does those, who puts all the milk, I mean, it's a facility that's run on a generator, because he's Amish. So it gives you an idea of what the scale is. But I don't know how I got here, but this is a tangent. But
It's
Do
just
you
all
so
the
guys
it's
have
all
a
the
good
product.
product. I don't know how to end that. So
But
there
well,
you go.
I do, because I know we were I was talking to Aaron about this, but recently, and a friend of mine, Brian, shout out to Brian, sent this to me yesterday, and then I went down a rabbit hole and found out that, it's a bunch of malarkey, but I still reached out to several people. But there's a new thing there's a new thing just broadly on social media where people will do sponsored posts and they make it look like a regular post because everyone is ad blind. And I noticed that there is all these, quote unquote mushroom supplements. I don't know why I said quote unquote, because they are mushroom supplements. I just don't know how many mushrooms there are. But where of different names, but they are all doing the same or similar messaging in their ads. And it's a veterinarian who regrets, what they learned in school, and how they thought they were helping dogs, but it turns out they weren't helping dogs, because then their dog got sick and they tried to do the same thing and they realized it doesn't really work. And then they did some research. Basically, it came down to their dog needed turkey tail, but they found out by speaking to the leading expert, I don't know who this is, on turkey tail, that dogs can only benefit from turkey tail if it's in a supplement that's combined with a particular probiotic. Coincidentally, the same probiotic that's kind of like in a lot of kibble brands that use probiotics, so it's nothing any special. And then when you do that, your dog is going to just basically miraculously be healed and everything's going to be gravy. But it reads really well, but
Mhm.
it's one of those where I think the average pet parent is gonna read that and be like, "Oh, okay, I better get this product because this veterinarian said this." Whereas anyone else is just gonna be like, is this true?" Because there's, like, all of these other brands that offer various, and no one is talking about the fact that we need to have a supplement that has a probiotic in it for it to be
Well,
beneficial.
I think the problem is, like, again, you go back to, you may have found that you get more use out of the turkey tail in your body with this bacteria present. But that again does not negate everything else from being effective, or effective in a different way.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like, uh, here's a good example of that. So when we were looking at this fermented mushroom thing, the reason why we did it partly was because people already did mushrooms really well. People do great tinctures and powders. Why would we just randomly throw out a mushroom, green juju mushroom powder? You have that option other places, and some, people are doing it very, very well. And so it just goes back to, like, you can't, in the same breath, you can't say people have been using mushrooms for thousands of years for medicine, but unless you use my supplement that has this specific extraction method, you won't get any of the medicine. Well, then how on earth were they getting this use out of it before that thing was invented?
Mhm.
So obviously there's benefits to mushrooms just generally. So um, that's where I think people go wrong. And, on the bacteria point of that too, is if we ever look at bacteria and we go, oh, we know this bacteria does great, this thing, that's great. It's great to have that studied version of bacteria. But I was giving a talk once, I think it was in California, but I kind of did this to the audience to make my point because I knew that they were going to do this essentially. So I was talking about bacteria, and I was talking about this one common bacteria that's found in fermented foods. And I listed the name of the bacteria, and then I listed like 10 different health benefits, right? It was like creates this vitamin. It was like, creates, helps to initiate like a glutathione path. And there's all these variables. And so immediately, which I knew would happen, everyone writes down that bacteria. Oh, this is what I need to get in there. But the point I was making was if you studied every bacteria, you would have a list just like that with different things of all these variable health benefits. So maybe we should think less about, oh, this specific strand does this, and more about how do I put thousands of strands that all do different things and affect health in many, many different ways, versus like that one right there. Like, is that better than if somebody took our probiotic in a turkey tail supplement? I have no idea, but I'm not willing to say it's not for sure. Just generally. By the way, I would like to go back to fiber because I would like to state for the record that I've been eating a lot more fiber lately. It's sort of my health goal was to still remain low carb, but eat a lot more fiber. So what I do is basically before meals now, I just like put 30 grams of chia seeds in water and let them soak for a bit and then just drink the entire thing beforehand because it's like 10 grams of fiber. And then it's like 11 grams of carbs. And then I can like do my thing. But that's been interesting because there's a lot. That's kind of the thing in human right now is fiber generally. So I've been experimenting with that myself.
So is it
Kimberly laughs at me.
So are you finding you feel better? Are you finding anything with it other than what I think Kimberly's laughing about?
Yeah, I do. I do. I think it wasn't the funny thing was, and Emily always gets, I feel like mad at this, but I didn't intend to lose weight. I feel like that's happening somewhat. But no, the big difference I noticed is like you get full really quickly. So like I can eat a normal dinner after doing that with the chia seeds and be like completely full versus like I might in the past be like, hey, I know I ate this dinner, but I'm also going to like pop some air popcorn in with raw butter and eat a bowl, this big, like 18 cups of popcorn. Where now I can just kind of like, stop there. And so it's kind of been interesting, but so we'll see. I'm always willing to try the stuff on myself, and then because I'm very regimented when it comes to like, so like I still drink the raw milk and eat the raw eggs every day, but I just do it with chia seeds now. So it's not that hard.
And I admire that you keep it up when traveling also.
Yeah, I actually take the cup in the hotel room and put the thing in. I will say it's funny because I experiment. I eat more plants now for two reasons, and the dog gets more plants as well. First big one is knowing Kelly and, obviously going more into the nutrition of plants for dogs and seeing the high benefit of that. And then the second part is, Maple, my daughter, is very plant centric when it comes to eating. She's all about cutting up fruits and vegetables and just eating that and doing that. And so it's a little bit hard for me to relate to. But, so that kind of, shows me like, oh yeah, different people, different dogs, their bodies need different things.
Yeah.
Will she be 5 soon?
She's 5 on May 1st.
Wow.
If you can believe that. She broke my heart the other day because she looked at me and she goes, raw milk is nasty.
She's supposed to save her rebellion for the teenage years.
Oh, she is not. She is fully in it right now. It's crazy.
I can just picture her like getting a Coca-Cola and just like staring you down and drinking it.
I will say, and I know this isn't about parenting, but I will say people often ask because I'll put like a video online of her like eating a bunch of different varied foods and stuff. I think the key to that is not, we don't force her to do really anything with that. But Emily and I talk about nutrition so much and we talk about food to each other. She just wants to be a part of it, I think. Like we didn't tell her to want to cut up all the vegetables and fruits and eat them and stuff like that and do that kind of stuff. And so I do think with people, like if you just make food priority in your life,
Mhm.
it will extend to, that aspect of it. So I try not to be neurotic. That's the main thing.
What a lucky little girl.
I think so. But here we are.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I am waiting with bated breath for this
I know.
study.
Exactly.
Well, good. I feel like we could talk for like 10 hours because
I
this
know.
goes by very quickly. Uh, no, the study will be out soon, and I'm super excited to share that with people and also just see like what it's done. If you'll allow me to just tell one more story, I think
Of
it's
course.
relevant.
Please.
I told it on. I just did like 3 events in San Diego. And I tried to vary up the stories because like Antoine and Kelly were with me at all the events. So it's like, I didn't want to get too boring. But I go back to this story because I just think it shows like what can happen with this type of feeding with all the bacteria and the fiber that I do generally. So Huckleberry, went on the normal journey of like I got, even though he's like he's third generation raw fed dog. He's very healthy. His body is different than a Frenchie. Like he's just a different type of dog. But he still had his bad allergy summer, like where wore a cone, did the whole thing. Still was figuring out his diet. And boy, when I made a change to uh, more fiber and more plant exposure and these probiotics and the wild fermented mushroom probiotic, the change not only in his allergies, which are reduced 100%. The one thing I needed to tweak the very end, that last 5% was something I know that Kimberly loves, which is PEA. Um, so that helped. But I was 95% of the way there. So, but the thing, why I bring this up is the resilience point. Because, like, most of us have dogs where we're like, oh, my dog is raw fed. They eat all these different foods. They'll have a soft stool once a week or whatever it might be, or sometimes. And that's not normal. That's totally normal because I think, people can relate to that as well. However, with Huckleberry, ever since I've been feeding our probiotics every day, he is just completely standard. It doesn't matter what he eats. And that includes, there's a video of this on Instagram if you go to my Instagram, but I left a bucket of Halloween candy on the floor and he ate the entire thing.
Oh
So
my
he ate
God.
like 4 full size regular candy bars, like 15 lollipops, just a huge amount of candy. So we come home and there's wrappers everywhere. And I'm like, all right, let me assess. So I'm looking around and I'm like, there's no xylitol here. There's no dark chocolate. I mean, keep in mind, your dog has to eat a lot of milk chocolate. So I wasn't worried about him. You're not going to die. So I'm not going to take you to do that. So side note, Emily was like, should you text someone who knows about this kind of thing? And I was like, I literally said to her, it's me. I know about this kind of thing. So, so he literally just threw up once and had one soft stool. And then a week later, and I'm not the worst dog owner in the world, I promise, but a week later, he ate in one sitting a ring pop, a candy necklace, and an entire thing of Swiss Miss cocoa powder.
Oh my God.
Did not even have a soft stool, just straight up regular business. This dog now can eat anything and he's totally fine. And that's a complete change from when he was there. And I really credit that to inoculating him with all this bacteria. And I do think that that's not just his digestive health. It really, the things you talked about in the study, it reduces his inflammation. It makes him just generally healthier and less susceptible to things like allergies. And so that's my thing now is like, how do we make dogs resilient where they can just be dogs. Like the whole point is we just want to hang out with our dogs and love our dogs. We don't want to have to think about their health 100% of the time, right?
And, it's funny when you say resilience, obviously, I understand the context in which you're using it, but to me, because I have a dog that's such a head case and another dog that's so reactive to, motorcycles and, bicycles and scooters and, like, anything that moves other than a car, um, for us, resilience is like how fast do they recover, like, from their anxiety and from,
Mhm.
something that's stressful. And so, but so much of that is also tied to gut health, right? So anyway, it's just another way to look at like resilience too, is like, oh, maybe your dog can eat things and be okay, but like, can they recover from something that stresses them out
Yeah.
too?
Mhm.
And that's where the human research is going too, is like how does your gut health relate to ADHD or depression or, those types of things. And so it's cool to be on the forefront of that. So I'm excited. And I throw those in with soil. I put that in like maple stuff all the time. So it doesn't matter if it's like in her water when she goes to school, in whatever I can, I just, throw that stuff in there. So people, you can also take those things.
You put dirt in our water?
I put the soil probiotic.
Oh, okay, okay.
And the only reason I don't like do the other two is because, she drinks a lot of kombucha anyway. And she also she drinks raw milk and whatnot. Last thing I'll tell you, today is St. Patrick's Day, and I gave her this morning she had our beautiful A2 raw Jersey cow milk with Lucky Charms in it. So
Well, that is balance.
gotta live your life, you know?
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Billy.
Of course.